Hello everyone, hope you all are doing good. I know it's been a while since I uploaded a video to this channel, so moving forward I hope to make more regular content on this channel. So today I would like to share how I actually set up my Fujifilm X100v for photography, mainly for street photography. How one sets up this camera is kind of personal and set of choices one makes. So what might work for me might not work for you, but I'm still making this video so that someone out there can learn a thing or two, something like a tips and tricks video, so that one can better improve the shooting experience with the X100v. If you guys also have something to add to this, do let me know in the comment section below so that I too feel a bit educated. Along this video, I will also be sharing some of my recent images that I have made with the X100v. So do let me know which one is your favorite, and also do follow me on Instagram as I post there pretty regularly. And if this is your first time stopping by my channel and you did enjoy watching this video, then hit that like button and consider subscribing as it really helps. So now let's move to the main part of the video. I would like to break down the setup process into two different sections: internal setup and external setup. In this section, I would like to focus on how I actually set up my X100v so that I can just pick up the camera and start shooting. As everyone knows that Fujifilm cameras have a lot of buttons and dials, and you can customize these buttons and dials based on your liking. For my needs, when there is generally a lot of light, I like to shoot with an aperture at f8 or higher, so I always set my aperture at f8 even before I turn on the camera. I set my shutter speed dial at T and my ISO dial at C, so that I can change my shutter speed using the rear command dial and the ISO using the front command dial. This way I have complete control of the exposure triangle, and for my style of shooting I don't use the exposure compensation dial at all. The X100v also has a couple of function buttons. So function button 1, which I have mapped it to change my film simulation. Function button 2, I have mapped it to trigger face eye detect autofocus. I feel it works pretty well on the X100v. As I mentioned earlier, that function button 1 I have mapped it to change my film simulation. I always like to shoot with classic chrome film simulation, but of late I'm shooting more in black and white, and I'm also trying to visualize the scene in black and white through the EVF and also the LCD. And in order to visualize the scene in black and white, I generally use Acros film simulation mode with the red filter on, and it gives me more contrast. The reason why I'm starting to shoot more in black and white is I'm trying to focus a little bit more on compositions. When I have shooting at a much more slower pace, I want to focus more on compositions. I want to remove all distractions, and I really want to focus on structures and angles, light and shadow. It really helps to look at the scene in black and white. To be honest, I feel that my work has improved a bit while I'm trying to shoot in black and white. My recommendation is, whenever you feel uninspired or you're bored or you do not know what to do with street photography, having constraints or trying something new or mixing up things and not doing the same thing that you always do, or moving away from the mundane, always helps you to improve. I've used this exercise to go out and shoot regularly, and hope this also helps you guys. I also do not use the Q button as much on this camera. I've just used it to customize my ND filter on and off. Sometimes when there is a lot of harsh light and I also want to shoot wide open, this ND filter really comes in handy. As you guys know, that the Fujifilm X100v with the 23mm f2, the Mark II lens, it's razor sharp and packs a punch at f2. Having this ND filter, you can shoot wide open. I'm also glad that Fuji will be rolling out this feature to video functionality, where you can have an ND filter on while you're shooting at 24 frames per second. You don't need to crank up your shutter speeds while shooting scenes at 24 frames per second. For the focus modes, I always like to shoot in autofocus only. That's my preferred focusing way using this camera. The camera is pretty snappy. I always keep my camera in continuous autofocus mode. It works pretty well. It tracks pretty well. Sometimes when there are situations when autofocus doesn't work as well or is not as reliable, I want to shoot in manual focus mode, and while shooting in manual focus mode also, I have mapped my AEL AFL button to AF on so that I can override manual focus and use autofocus even in manual mode, which is just amazing. Also, I've completely turned off my touchscreen options in order to change any of the menus. I just use the touchscreen in order to move my autofocus point. Apart from that, I do not use the touchscreen in order to change any of the settings on this camera. I feel that if you are using the touchscreen and when you are viewing the image through the viewfinder, I think the touchscreen moves very well in order to move your autofocus point. It just moves like a joystick, which is just amazing. Apart from that, I do not use the touchscreen for any other thing. So that's about it with the external setup. So now let's move to internal setup. In this section, I just want to talk about some of my predetermined set of rules for image processing so that the camera software gives me an image based on my needs. For example, the image that I want at a certain resolution or certain colors that I want. So if you look at the Fujifilm X100v menu, there are a lot of options available and you can customize almost anything and everything on this camera, which is just amazing. If you look at the menu, they have been segregated into several sections. I think there are like 7 sections. But for this video, I'm just going to focus on image quality settings, autofocus settings, and shooting settings. I'm just going to focus on these 3 things. So image quality settings, I always like to shoot in the aspect ratio 3:2, and I always shoot JPEG as well as RAW. I shoot only in compressed RAW. I've tried to see if there is any difference between compressed, uncompressed RAW. I did not find any, so I just went ahead with saving my storage space. I don't tweak any of the settings for my JPEGs, except these days I like to have a bit more contrast in my JPEGs. So I play around with my highlights and shadow settings so that I have a bit more punch in my JPEGs that are coming straight out of this camera. Apart from that, I don't change any of the settings for the JPEG processing in the camera. I would recommend you guys to stay away from changing the clarity settings on this camera, because once you do that, it really slows down the write speeds of your files onto your SD card. So stay away from playing around with the clarity or trying to improve the clarity in camera. You can do that if you want in post in Lightroom or Capture One. I would recommend you guys not to do that in camera. For the autofocus continuous settings, I just use standard set 1, which is the multi-purpose one. And I've also changed the number of autofocus points from 117 that comes as default to around 425 autofocus points. I've also turned off pre-autofocus. Also, I mostly shoot with the mechanical shutter only. There are a zillion things to change and play around in this camera, but I don't spend my time and resources in setting up the camera a certain way. I've been shooting with Fujifilm cameras for a long time now, so I know what are the type of images I will get or how the camera responds to certain settings. So it's not a big deal, and I always shoot RAW. So Fuji allows the ability to add your color profiles or your film simulations in post, which is just amazing. So I don't spend much time setting up the camera. So it's not that this is the only way you can set up your camera. There are much better setup videos out there, but I just wanted to share the way how I shoot with the X100v. According to me, do not spend a lot of time setting up your camera or watching a lot of settings videos. Just go out there and shoot and just have fun. And if you did like this video and if you like the images that I shared, do consider subscribing to my channel. That's about it for today. Until then, take care and ciao ciao.